My earliest memory of photography is in terms of my own experience of taking pictures, was taking pictures of my friends throwing buckets of water at each other on the beach. That's the first time with the Kodak Instamatic. But the more conscious attempt at photography was ski photography, because I've skied my entire life and I still ski occasionally, and it was a way of recording how high we jumped, how far we jumped, the places we jumped. That was my very first attempt, and then that developed into something different again when I started to go to concerts, went to gigs, as a way of trying to remember what we did and who we saw, and taking pictures of the people we loved to go to, listen to. We did pictures at gigs. Well, I did picture gigs with a couple of friends who did it.
So it was really about a way of capturing a memory in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, at first it was just bragging, I think. Just like, you know, look what we've done. It's how crazy is this? Obviously, it's not very crazy by today's standards. And then it was more of trying to, because we'd go to a lot of concerts, and it was a way of, I think, trying to get the concert to be your own in a way. So you take it with you, not because you couldn't take your music with you, but you took your icons, your heroes with you.
How did that sort of interest in capturing a moment develop into you really thinking about photography is where my interest lies?
Well, there was quite a long gap between that and doing it again. This was more teenage years, early teenage years, and then it kind of disappeared away. I went in to do other things. I guess it came back after a year at university, where I realized that spending a year at university, I realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I mean, I think to be a student would be fine, but realizing the options I would have later, I didn't really want to spend the rest of my life in that world. And as an option, I felt kind of quite pressurized to come up with something that I really loved at that point. And the one thing that was natural for me and I thought was quite unresolved, I don't think I even thought about it like that at the time, but thinking back at it, I think the one thing that I thought that I wanted to try that I hadn't really tried was taking pictures.
And how did you learn all the sort of technical side and the processes? Was that self-taught?
The base, you have to, you know, it's kind of like a mystery around photography, and it's pretty much rubbish. You know, it's so basic. Anyone can do it. It's not about the technique. It's not about those, you know, if you look at people who work with really, really basic techniques, they can take the most amazing pictures. It's not about technique. I mean, technique, a lot of it, the basic I learned there. I learned later on assisting in Norway for a photographer there called Niels Beek. And then obviously it was a quantum leap when I worked for Nick later on, where you come in with the basic knowledge and then you see that this can be developed to such a high level and such a high quality. Because I think one thing is the technique and one thing is to learn what is required in terms of quality. And working for Nick as an assistant, that obviously exploded. And then, you know, I still learn things all the time, still develop. It's not like you come to a certain point and then that development stops.
How important or how integral has that been? Or was that process?
Oh, it's hugely important. Yeah, I've said that many, many times as well. And I think, you know, when you come I think I was 24 at that point, and I'd never been in touch with the world of fashion at all. The world of photography, yeah, but the world of, you know, my history of fashion started there. My year one is there, or year zero rather, is there. And it was great because, you know, Nick's way of looking at it is so wide and so open that I feel that that's the kind of greatest gift Nick has ever given me. Because I remember talking to Nick about it, and he was saying, so, you know, what kind of music do you like, and, you know, what kind of, you know, really trying to kind of, because he's interested, right? Not because he's trying to play games with you or anything, but it would be, you know, he'd be interested in who was this guy he was going to hire and pretty much spend every waking hour with for the next 3 years. And I would say things like, oh, well, you know, I love Miles Davis because Miles Davis' music is so unique, you know, he would work in different kind of genres, but his style, you can always hear it through all the time. no, I think it's quite important to find your style, and Nick would just arrest me straight away and say, no, it's just not that, just forget that straight away, just don't try to find the style at all. Just go out, treat everything individually, put your mind to every project as it was a new thing. Those kind of thoughts are fantastic. I don't think that there's many people who will kind of teach you that as a photographer's assistant.
Was it quite hard to make that transition from being, in such a high-profile position as Nick's assistant to moving on to becoming your own photographer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's scary as whatever, but at the same time, I have to admit, even if I thought the job was joyful, it was bloody hard, and Nick's the first to admit that. So it was kind of like the definition of mixed emotion. It was like such a joy of finally kind of be able to do my own thing, and obviously terrifying to be able to do my own thing. But at the same time, I just started doing a couple of small things, so I knew that I could do it, if that makes sense. And also Nick had let me do things when I worked for him, which was very generous. So I kind of had tried, because it kind of sounds weird, but to actually stand behind a camera and having to communicate with someone is terrifying, because you have to get either a performance out of someone, or you have to kind of capture something that you think is essential about that person, and there's so many great photographers out there as well, so you know what the standard is, you know how good it can be, and if you put your standards up to the level of whoever you admire, it's pretty terrifying.
So in terms of when you begin to create images, what is your process? Where do you start from?
It's different every time.
Depending on the job.
Yeah, it really is. And I wish it would save me a lot of time if I had like a process to go through every time. But sometimes you start from scratch, nothing there, just clean plate, we're going to do something, what are we going to do? Which is very interesting but terrifying as well, you have to start from scratch. Sometimes you get presented with, well, we got all these black dresses, and that's what's happening this season. The nice thing about fashion photography is that it changes. I mean, what you start with change every season, because very often you start with the clothes. Sometimes you're able to start with a project. So for instance, you say, well, I got this idea, can we make that relevant to what's going on this season? Or sometimes you actually just make it work,
And do you have a particular format that you prefer? Do you find it easier to when you're told these are the clothes or this is the concept?
No, I think that in a perfect universe, you have an idea, the fashion editor has an idea, and they work together. That happens from time to time, and that's fantastic. It's nothing better than that. Everyone's happy on set. And otherwise, it's about conversations. You start, and you have, unluckily, a lot of people have the same reference points. It's more interesting when you kind of get crossing things. I've had shoots where Katie Gran wanted to shoot The Splash by David Hockney, and John Galliano wanted to shoot Samurai Warriors for Pop. And then, weirdly enough, we managed to mix the two together by dropping samurai warrior dressed women into a big tank to get the splash thing together. And when you get those kind of crossing references, it's very, very interesting. I think a lot of people do that these days. They take the fashion from one reference and the context of another, and it makes it new. Sometimes it can be a lazy way of thinking and a way of getting things out there that isn't too obviously referenced. But sometimes when you don't have those intentions and they're really separate references and they come together like that, it's very interesting. But then, and then you're able to take it and put it into a whole new world, because unluckily a lot of people work in fashion with specific references. It's a period, there's a style, there's a photographer, there's an old model that they like, there's a hairstyle they like. There's a lot of things are referenced like that, and obviously it's a very convenient way of working. People respond to something they recognize slightly. Do you know what I mean? We have to remember that the fashion world is a commercial world and not a world of art, so it doesn't have the requirements of art, that you don't have to kind of create something absolutely outside of a previous context.